Hello, I am Brian McCall, the editor-in-chief of Catholic Family News. I'm in Chicago for the 2019 Catholic Family News Conference, 50 Years of Problems with the New Mass. We are honored this weekend to have an international panel of speakers address this topic of the new Mass and its 50 years from a variety of perspectives. And one of them is here joining me in between conferences to talk, Mr. Stéphane Wailliez, who is really quite an international traveler. He was sharing with us, he travels from Japan to Canada to Belgium, but he started life in Belgium and was schooled in France and then obtained degrees from the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. He's now returned to study, and his conference, if you purchase it to listen to through Catholic Family News, is clearly a conference of a scholar, an incredibly meticulous and careful scholar. He's now pursuing his doctoral degree on the subject of the history of the making of the new Mass, so the period after the Council ordered the revision of the books up into 1969 and how that process developed. So thank you for joining us for this conversation. Mm-hmm. And in interview, we'd really just like to talk a little bit about, personally, your experience with the Mass. And so maybe you can start by telling us, where did you grow up Catholic? Did you grow up going to the traditional Mass or the new Mass? And so maybe give us a little background.
Yes, I grew up in a Catholic family in Belgium, yes. Mm-hmm. Both my father and my mother are staunchly Roman Catholic. Actually, I grew up first with the Byzantine liturgy, the Divine Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, because when I was a kid, the traditional Latin Mass was no more available in Belgium, or hardly so. So my parents didn't have much of a choice. And as they had a Catholic Ukrainian parish not far from where we lived, they chose to go to that church. But they always retained their link to, of course, their first memories of church were, of course, the traditional Latin Mass. My parents were both born in the 1940s. But as for me, my first memories of church are the images of the Byzantine liturgy. But then when the traditional Latin Mass gradually came back to Belgium, I discovered the Mass of the Latin Church, of the Western Church at all, because I'd never seen it before. So that's how. But I mean, I grew up in a traditional Catholic family.
Yes. So anyway. The first time you saw the Roman Rite and the traditional Latin Mass, what were your impressions of it? What particularly, and you have an interesting perspective coming from seeing the Eastern liturgy. What about it struck you as similar, maybe to the Eastern liturgy, but what was uniquely Roman about it?
What struck me at first were more the similarities, actually, than the differences, because yes, although of course externally speaking, visually speaking, when it comes to just the sheer appearances, it's pretty different, of course. But I believe what I felt as a child, as a 7 or 8-year-old, was the identity between the Byzantine and the Roman Rite, traditional Roman Rite. That is an ethos of worshipping, of adoration, of the Divine Majesty, and etc. So, but what struck me as a difference between the Roman and the Byzantine liturgy was that the Roman liturgy struck me as being much more sober. Would you say sober?
Yes, sober. Yes.
Much more sober. Yes.
Interesting.
But it certainly it struck me as beautiful. I mean, certainly beautiful, sober but beautiful.
Yeah. And then in your lecture today, you shared with us just a small bit, I can tell, of all the research you've done. It probably could have, the entire conference weekend you could have filled teaching us. But what I did find interesting, maybe you can share, is you said there's really very little interest, even just among historians, in studying this period. And that was surprising to me. So maybe you could share with us a little bit how you discovered that.
Yes. I discovered that because when I contacted a number of scholars in Europe, mainly in Europe, about my research, most of them were interested in the Council in Vatican II. They were focused on Vatican II. Sometimes they even misunderstood my research as being a research about Vatican II. And I said, no, this is about the Concilium. So Concilium, which is not Concilium. Concilium is the Council,
yes.
Vatican II. The Concilium was the executive post-conciliar commission that devised the new liturgical books. So there's a lot of confusion between the two terms, Concilium and Concilium, and there's also a conceptual confusion because I don't know for whatever reason, but the focus is really overwhelmingly on Vatican II.
And so it does seem, from listening to you, you're really one of probably not very many people in the world who are looking at these materials and documents and preserving for us that knowledge of history, which I'm very grateful to you for doing. So maybe can you share with us briefly why you think it's important to study the history of something? So if we have this thing, the new Mass, we can obviously see what it is today, but why is understanding how it came to be, how it came into being, an important exercise?
Yeah. It's important for a couple of reasons. First, because when you study the actual making of the new Mass and of the new liturgical and sacramental books,
Yes.
You can actually figure out what the goals were. I mean, the ends that were set right at the beginning.
Yes.
The objectives, and then when it comes to the new liturgical books, what strikes me is that they're actually the end product of a negotiation. Perhaps I should say a horse trading, so it's highly interesting to see the actual process of how the new rites were elaborated, because they were elaborated fundamentally as a negotiation and as a compromise between different tendencies, between the experts on the Concilium were very competent scholars in most cases, but they had some scholarly academic obsessions about a number of things. Yes. And so they negotiated between their different obsessions to arrive at a result which was a compromise. So these are compromise rites. So if you only analyze the end product, you don't know what lies behind. So that's why studying the actual process of how it was devised, how it was elaborated is important.
Disentangle those threads that were compromised, woven together. Yes.
Yes.
Good. Well, and I believe when we spoke last night, you told us a bit about your family and growing up in a good traditional family. I think you have a brother who is a priest, who was ordained in the traditional rite. So were you able to be at his ordination?
Yes, I attended his ordination. Yes.
And maybe what were your? Do you have impressions from that ceremony, from seeing your brother? We had a conference today from Father McMahon on the priesthood and what the priesthood means. But can you maybe describe for us what it was like to see your brother elevated to the altar, to be a priest of the altars?
First, I have to say that I arrived a little bit late for the ordination ceremony, because one of my actually I have four brothers. Another of my brothers was lost in central Switzerland, and I had to drive all night to fetch him from a tiny station in central Switzerland, and then drive back to Econ. So that was part of the story.
The devil always has a hand in something.
Yes. But an ordination ceremony is very long. It lasts 3 or 4 hours, and I missed 20 minutes or something. So
it was just getting started.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. No, actually, that ceremony it was pretty moving to see my brother being ordained, becoming a priest, and
wow.
Yes.
Who ordained him? Was it the Archbishop or was it later?
No, that was later. He was ordained by Bishop de Galarreta.
De Galarreta. Oh, yeah. He confirmed 2 of my children actually, Bishop de Galarreta. Wow. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for spending a few moments with us to share a little bit. We wish you, all of us at Catholic Family News, wish you well with your research and look forward to the day when you receive your doctoral degree, and perhaps we can read an English translation of your dissertation as a book someday.
Yes, with pleasure.
So thank you. Thank you for joining us to visit with yet another one of our conference speakers here in Chicago in May 2019. And all of the conferences will be available through the Catholic Family News website. Please check back frequently for news and updates on the website. Thank you for your attention.